So lately I've been observing many people, especially here on YouTube, who are trying to simplify their lives. Minimalism is an interesting trend for sure. People are just overwhelmed with stuff, with information, social media. And I agree, I'm overwhelmed by all of that as well. And there is a reason I have no Instagram and I don't use my Facebook anymore. But now I have this channel, and I have to admit I find myself seduced by doom scrolling quite often. And when I look around in the apartment that I currently share with my son and my son's father, I feel as if I've lost control over my life. I just lost track of all the little toys that flooded into my home from grandparents, or due to lack of time, because living a simple or minimalist lifestyle requires time and energy, at least at first. And I don't have plenty of that right now, to be honest. It sort of feels like a vicious cycle. Sometimes life simply isn't simple. Sometimes life really challenges us. When we're dealing with a physical or mental disease, dealing with trauma, becoming caregivers for our loved ones, going through separation, or when we have to flee from war, like my friend Natasha, who I introduced in my last video. And this is all real stuff to deal with. And it's not stuff that is so easy to get rid of. And I think it's no wonder that when we're dealing with heavy stuff like that in our lives, that it potentially manifests around us. And I think the worst thing to do is to feel bad about that, or to compare ourselves to other people where everything seems perfect. When I saw my first video about simplifying and minimalism here on YouTube, we had the COVID pandemic and my son was still very little, and I was carrying him around on my back all of the time, which gave me the opportunity to declutter a lot because I got so inspired by these videos. And I can remember each day I would set a little goal for myself and tackle a little corner, and what I didn't need I would just donate or sell on eBay. But that was long before my son had developed an attachment to all of his toys, and also before he started creating the most beautiful three-dimensional art objects. And it was also long before my life got really heavy. My need to simplify has stayed with me, but to be honest, it has mutated into this weird urge, and it makes me feel so frustrated, and I feel so trapped sometimes, because every time I try to simplify something on the surface, I just feel like Sisyphus, because I feel like I'm failing over and over and over again because I just can't sustain it. And I realized that in order to make room for what really matters in my life, because that's what simplifying should be about, in my opinion, I had to become clear about what I need and what I don't need, not only on a material level, but first and foremost on an energetic level. So what I need is pretty clear to me. It's my family and friends, my creativity, creative outlet, creative expression, and also the maintenance of my physical and mental health and healing. But when it came to all the things I needed to let go of, there was one thing in particular that stood out to me, that it all came down to: my deep-rooted fear of not being enough. I truly believe that the deep-rooted fear of not being enough is directly connected to the feeling or the fear of not having enough. And also to the urge of self-optimization, and it drives us to compensate through things over which we can define ourselves, that give us a sense of purpose and identity. And that's not only material stuff, it can also be status, maybe performance, abilities, appearance. And even not having stuff or having very little stuff can become like an aesthetic must-have. There are some channels here on YouTube about simple minimalist living that I really love, that are really authentic and inspiring. And there are others though where I feel, that they're trying to sell a certain lifestyle to me that I just can't afford. My point is that instead of getting frustrated with my inability to simplify the surface of things, and by that I mean like the material dimension, I want to ask myself, which thoughts and which actions contribute to my feeling of not being enough? And there are plenty, and they seem to be like my main creativity killers. Not the clutter, not the stuff, but basically each time I feel the need to please, to perform, or to self-optimize. I told myself that I will simply, I will try at least, simply free myself from the clutter of overthinking and having to please. And what really helps me with that is journaling. Journaling for me is like a really great way to become aware and to make space for what I truly need and for what really matters to me. And it's like an inner decluttering, and it helps me to become aware of my authentic needs and core values, and they are the soil where I plant my seeds of inner growth. Becoming aware of my needs and values helps me to make clear decisions, set priorities, and create space for thriving and creativity. Sometimes, maybe you can identify with that, sometimes I'm just not sure what my authentic needs are. For example, I might ask myself if it would be better to stay at home and just relax, or if it would be better to go for a run. And when I'm unsure like that, I ask myself one question: which decision is more based on self-love, unconditional self-love, and which comes more from a place of lack and from the fear of not being enough? That's why I think getting in touch with our feelings, thoughts, and sensations is so important. Learning to become aware of awareness and learning to be present and non-judgmental with my thoughts, feelings, and sensations. I think what we sometimes tend to forget about simplifying, or this simple living so many of us are longing for, is that it should be about making room for what really matters to us. And that is so individual for each and every person, because each and every one of us has their individual baggage. And for some it's lighter, and for some it's heavier. But what we don't need is additional pressure, to follow to chase a certain lifestyle. I guess what I'm just trying to say here is, and what really became clear to me while making this little video, simplifying only makes sense when it comes from a place of unconditional self-love. Because when it comes from the fear of not being enough, it will simply become a compensation where the real stuff that actually has to be dealt with just gets shifted or delayed to a hidden place. And here's what I'm going to do now. I will simply end this video because I think it's the most self-loving way, because I'm really hungry. I really need to eat. So thank you so much for watching till the end. And if you want to stay in touch, consider subscribing or reaching out to me in the comments. And I'm sending you lots of hugs. And remember, you deserve to love yourself unconditionally.